Welcome to the Forge, my wanton wildlings. I'm your creepsmith, and I hope you like my work.
People often speak of a community spirit, a feeling of belonging that binds those within such places together, creating a bond of camaraderie and goodwill. The spirit in tonight's story is no such animal, however, though an animal is part of its identity. The Clifton Bunnyman by Timothy Forbes. The tale of the Bunnyman is an old one, going back many years. Originally, it started around 1931, after many of the murders attributed to this character had already been committed. For verification of the story, you can visit the Old Clifton Library, located in Clifton, North Virginia, USA. What I'm about to tell you is entirely true, although I've never seen the Bunnyman. But everyone in Clifton believes it to be true. One quick reference to help you understand the story. The bridge mentioned has a one-lane car road passing underneath a dual railroad track above it within the woods along a gravel road. Back in 1903, just outside of Clifton, there was an asylum buried deep within the woods. Pretty soon after the Civil War, people started drifting back into the area, and population-wise, the town grew to about 300 or so. It was a very small town. Nonetheless, people didn't like the idea of having an asylum just a few miles down the road, so they all got together and signed a petition stating the asylum should be relocated elsewhere. The petition passed, and a new asylum was built, which is now known as Lorton Prison. It was a temporary facility until convicts were appropriately sentenced. In the fall of 1904, the convicts were gathered and piled into a bus which was to transport them to Lorton. Somehow, during the drive not too far from where they'd left, the driver had swerved to avoid something and the bus started to tip over and soon rolled into a collision. Most of the convicts were injured, but managed to escape the bus and flee into the night. Later on, the next morning, a local police investigation began, and they'd begun rounding up the convicts who had escaped. Hours turned into days, days into weeks, weeks into months. Everyone was recovered after 4 months except for 2 people, Marcus Walster and Douglas J. Griffin. During the search for both men, the police randomly found dead rabbits, half-eaten and dismembered every now and then along their search. Finally, they found Marcus dead himself by the Fairfax Station Bridge, now known as Bunnyman's Bridge. In his hand, he held a primitive hammer knife-like tool made with a sharp rock and a pretty sturdy branch as a handle, though they knew nothing and cared not of how he died, only that he was apprehended and they no longer had to worry about him. Gallows humor prompted them to give Marcus a name, but later on they'd realize they had named the wrong person, the Bunnyman. Still searching for Douglas, they kept on finding dead, half-eaten bunnies every so often while the search went on. Finally, they were to name Douglas the Bunnyman, and referred to him as that from then on. 3 months passed by and the police had given up their search come April 7th, 1905. Everyone assumed that the Bunnyman was dead by now, if not gone, so they went on living their lives. Come October, people started seeing dead bunnies again, reappearing out of the blue, and started to fear the unseen, what lived in their woods. Halloween night came around, and as usual, a bunch of kids had gone over to the bridge that night to drink and do whatever kids their age did in the 1900s. Midnight came around, and within minutes most of the kids had left, only 3 of them remaining there. Then, just at midnight, supposedly, a bright light from back within the bridge blinded the children, and less than a couple seconds later, they were all dead. Throats slashed with what appeared to be the same type of tool found with the other escapee, Marcus. Not only were their throats slashed, but they were gutted from the top of their chests to the bottom of their abdomens. To top it off, the bunny man hung both of the males from one end of the bridge with a rope around their necks from the overpass with their legs dangling in front of passing cars. The woman was hung the same way on the other side of the bridge. This happened on Halloween in 1905. After that, they didn't see or hear from the bunny man for another year. Halloween 1906 was approaching, and parents as well as the teens in Clifton still remembered the incident that had occurred 1 year ago at the bridge. His bridge. The Bunny Man Bridge. That night, 7 teens were left remaining right before midnight at the bridge. Thinking of it, 6 remained inside the bridge, while one, Adrian Hatala, had remained a good distance from the bridge, hoping to have enough time to escape if the same thing happened again. At midnight, she witnessed only this, a dim light walking the railroad track right before midnight, stopping right above the bridge at midnight, and then disappearing at the same time as a bright flash occurred within the bridge. She heard the deafening sounds of horrific screams coming from inside the bridge that lasted only seconds. Soon after, they were all hung from the entrances of the bridge, same style as the corpses a year earlier. Horrified, she ran home. She didn't tell anyone of everything she saw, just scattered words here and there that some of the folk put together to come up with her story. No one understood it or even believed her. They charged her with the murder and locked her up in Lorton Asylum. In 1913, the same thing happened with 9 teenagers this time, again on Halloween night. Adrian, at this point, was still locked up. They dropped her sentence, but it was too late. The insanity had finally gotten to her. Even if she was released, she was too far gone to have a decent life, so she spent her remaining years in the asylum until she finally died in 1953 of shock. No one knows exactly what she died in shock from, but supposedly she had died sleeping, dreaming of that one dreaded night. Perhaps the bunny man had finally gotten to her. More murders were to take place, however, although after the murders in 1913, most people stayed clear of the bridge on Halloween night. 1943 rolls around, and 6 teenagers go strolling out again on Halloween. A couple hours later, all of them are dead, the same way as the others. Investigations took place, but as usual, nothing was discovered. 1976, same thing goes on, but this time with only 3 people, as if that makes it any better. The only other recorded incident that's occurred since then was in 1987, 11 years after the previous. Janet Chartelier was enjoying the night with her 4 friends. Halloween night had finally come, and they'd gone out driving to enjoy the night after invading their children's candy bags. They'd settled around 11 at the bridge, waiting for midnight to come. The skepticism of youth meant they didn't believe the myth, so they decided to see it for themselves, and they were bound to be the only ones who had ever actually withstood the Bunny Man. They'd waited about 55 minutes or so, almost at midnight, until Janet started getting a little scared. They'd all been pulling pranks, trying to scare each other, so she was already a little worked up. When midnight hit, she was completely freaked out. She was almost out of the bridge when the lights get really bright inside. When that happened, her body was just 1 step outside the bridge. She started seeing her skin tearing at the chest, but nothing was piercing her skin. She finally managed to exit the bridge. Completely horrified, she hit a hanging body and knocked herself out. When she awoke, she found her hair had turned white, and she'd been bleeding. She was lucky that the cut had just started, and it wasn't very bad at all. She left and never returned to that bridge again. She's been sitting on a swinging bench on her balcony every morning, just staring toward the direction of the bridge a couple of miles down. To this day, you can still find her on that bench. From then on, the story dwells untouched and unmoved. Near every Halloween night, you will find a bunch of people hanging around the bridge, drinking, smoking up, but within minutes of midnight, everyone leaves. It's been like that for the past 5 years that I've visited the bridge on Halloween night. Even if it isn't Halloween, any night you go there, you feel the presence of death, awaiting the sky of Halloween, yearning for more blood to be spilt in his name, the Bunny Man. Okay, so there's the tale. Here's the short myth. Halloween night comes around. Nothing happens until midnight, and right before midnight, supposedly a bunny or two enters the bridge. Right before midnight, his soul, a dim light, walks the tracks above the bridge. When midnight hits, his soul stops right above the bridge, dead center, and disappears, only to reappear inside the bridge. From then on, it's his soul which lights up the whole area, so brightly you can't even see him. That's when he kills you, instantly, by slitting your throat and slashing your chest, only to hang you at the entrance of the bridge. You can even see the rub marks that have worn away the rock where the bodies were swinging from the ropes. Whoever's inside the bridge ends up dead. Thanks for taking time to listen to this, and remember, everything except for the actual myth has been in Clifton's records since the date it happened. The old Clifton library still stands containing those records on microfiche. No, it would seem the Bunny Man inspires fear and paranoia with those he bonds by belief. Well, I suppose that makes it a community spirit of a sort. Stay scary, my wildlings. Keep the parties indoors and make the most of your nights.